I am been ordained to speak on Constitution and the role of advocates. First thing which we have to perceive what the Constitution is. And then immediately to go, we have to consider that the Constitution of a country reflects the character and nature of the country. An Indian Constitution, as similarly of other constitutions of the world, they have a background socio-political history. The Constitution of India is the product of a prolonged struggle against the British imperialists by the Indian people. The Constitution suddenly did not come from the heaven, or it was not the blessings of any perceived God. The Constitution of India was achieved when British imperialism was facing a threat of outright defeat, and the colonial rule was about to be completely wiped out. Then this Constitution, which came to us on the blood path, that blood has never dried. East India Company, I believe he will excuse me if I try to give a little bit of historical background. History is fact. That fact may not be liking to me, may not also be liked by you, but fact remains fact. East India Company is a British company, was a British company. They traveled to India to do business. Why? Because India had huge natural resources. This part of the world has huge natural resources because of its geographical condition. And another very important resource was human resources. The Indian skilled labor, which is the product of Indus civilization, they had drawn attraction of traders throughout the world. Not only the British, the Portuguese, the Scandinavians and all, but not. The British started business, started exploiting at some point of time the kisans of this country, or the artisans of this country, the weavers of this country, who had shown their excellence, and that excellence was reaping benefit for the capitalists. They revolted. That was described as Sepoy Mutiny. 1857, the first war of independence. That's the way the historians of the world have described it. This Sepoy Mutiny, in fact, to my reading, was the mutiny of the Kisans. The Sepoys are ordinarily drawn from the Kisans family. When they appreciated that they are being exploited, which they could visualize objectively, it was not necessary to teach them, you see, by X minus Y, they are getting Z profits, you are being exploited. No. They felt from their own first-hand experience, the ground realities, that they are being exploited. Whatever are produced by them is being exported to foreign countries, so to say England, and to patronize other colonial countries. But the Kisans here are not getting their due. They revolted. That revolt was a revolt of unity of Indian people, cutting across religious consideration. British historians wanted to depict it, that this was not really the revolt against the exploitation, but this was a revolt based on religious sentiment. That was the slant given by the British historians. Now many British historians and nowadays is accepting that theory. And they wanted to divide the united strength of the Indian people. They tainted the movement as a tainted of Hindu-Muslim division on the strength of their food habit. It was said that these totas, or the bullets, if I may say so, that was made out of either cow hide or the pig hide. And that paid immediate dividend to the Britishers. We had to fight another 100 years to achieve the Indian independence. I'll just refer to two important era of this war of independence, because this is not a history class, I am not a history person, I really can't have any comment about that. Jallianwala Bagh, as you know, is known to everybody. Now it has become a place of interest for the tourists. The Punjab people were brutally killed. Why? Because the Punjab Kishans and the people, they were fighting because their basic right of even take a procession was being threatened under the Rowlatt's Act. They had assembled to celebrate a social function of Baisakhi Day, as it is celebrated here in another name, and it's celebrated everywhere in the country in different name. That's the beauty of our country. Then the whole world, I am talking of the Indian community, got baffled. They became speechless. But one gentleman, who was the first Nobel laureate from Asia, Rabindranath Tagore, rose to the occasion and he returned the knighthood, which was the most coveted honor, a badge of honor by the Queen. While returning this badge of honor, Tagore wrote that this is not a badge of honor for an Indian. The Queen, who doesn't have the basic respect for the human lives and human qualities of Indian people, I cannot accept this badge of honor from that Queen. I return it. And he was very strong in his words. That created a ripple throughout the world. What happened? That someone had the courage to return the badge of honor offered by the Queen. After this, the Parliament of England, they decided to discuss the issue. That really hurt their sentiment. The General Dower was summoned before the Parliament. He was asked. He said, with all contempt, that I am really happy. Instead of feeling shame, instead of feeling indignant, I am happy. And I would have killed much more had my ammunitions not been exhausted. The killing of Indian people is the only way you can govern them. Again, the whole world started thinking, is this the civilized administration run by the Queen? Then a young boy from Punjab, a 19 years young man, Bhagat Singh, he threw a bomb during the session of Parliament. He was arrested. He was asked. He said, I am a Marxist. I don't want to kill anybody with bomb. Then why did you do it? I wanted to arouse the sentiment and conscience of the people of the world as well as of India. Indian people are sleeping. They cannot appreciate what is going on. They were happy with the British rule, giving them some morsel here and there, laying down railway lines, laying down big roads, and giving us the idea of worldly development of India. All these things were done. Therefore, I wanted to rouse them, let Indian people rise to the occasion. And then following that up in 1930s in Chittagong in Bengal, that Chittagong is now in Bangladesh, which is the third country created in the effect of the anti-British war. There, a young school teacher organized the young people, formed a guerrilla troop, and seized the British armory in Chittagong. And they kept under their occupation for 3 days. Obviously, there was an uneven battle. Thereafter, the British forces could reoccupy that. That was in 30s. In the meantime, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who had a very bad experience in South Africa as a lawyer, came down and thought of a new method of resistance against the British regime. That was Satyagraha. His theory was, now which is being extolled globally, that I don't cooperate with you. I don't cooperate with you running your administration. My commitment is to my country, that is my truth. Commitment to the truth, I non-cooperate with you. That got the whole Indian people united. At the same time, the Second World War, you must have seen, the fascist Hitler was dreaming to crown the world with fascism. His dream was shattered by a communist-run country, then Soviet Russia. With the defeat of Hitler, the colonial forces started thinking that this is the defeat of the era of colonialism. And immediately, British Parliament decided that it's high time that we should leave India. Another signal came that with the aid of Japan, Subhash Chandra Bose, he is known as Netaji, he had formed an army of Indian people called INA. They are also marching towards India. They had entered to Manipur. All these combined forces, which was admitted by the then Prime Minister of London, England, Mr. Attlee, forced them to say, we are leaving. Now, when the movements were at the peak, in the early 1900s, two fundamental religious groups raised the voice of two-nation theory. The Indian people who have been living together years, thousands of years together, who have been fighting the Britishers. The British capitalists, as you know, they are very much cunning to have their capital control throughout the world. They also fanned it, and ultimately India faced a very unfortunate division of power. One theocratic state, they said, we believe in theology, we believe in our religion, therefore we cannot stay with others, we will go. In that background, the Indian leaders were discussing that we have to take over power, how to rule the country. This is the genesis of Indian Constitution. Because we have already been ruled. Throughout the centuries, we are ruled by others. Now we have to rule. How to rule? Therefore, a constituent assembly was constituted, drawing people from different corners of life. All are very highly intellectual people. And they had decided to make a constitution. Now, what would be the constitution? How it is to be proceeded with? To be very brief, I shall read out from the objective resolution first, which was moved by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, a lawyer. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's objective resolution is a very important document, which was the foundation of discussion of constitution making. In the objective resolution, I will not read the entire thing, it's huge. I will just place before you to give you the factual assistance, what has happened and what was the resolution, and only trying to show that this is not out of my imagination. These are all documented. Everybody of you are a lawyer or must be related to the law or the social science. If you have the opportunity, please go through the constitutional debates of the Constitution Assembly. I just place you very important part of it. I will not read the entire thing, that will take hours. He says, well, I trust that it is in that solemn spirit that we too are meeting here, and that we too, whether we meet in this chamber or other chambers, or in the fields or in the marketplace, will go on meeting and continue our work till we have finished it. Then my mind goes back to a more recent revolution, which gave rise to a new type of state, the revolution that took place in Russia, and out of which has arisen the Union, the Soviet Socialist Republics, another mighty country, which is playing a tremendous part in the world. Not only a mighty country, but for us in India. Why was he referring to Soviet Russia? He says, not only a mighty country, but for us in India, a neighboring country. I just skip over a few other lines, it's not that relevant. Then if you say too much, it encroaches on the functions of those who are going to draw up a constitution. That is, on the functions of this house. The resolution is not a part of the constitution we are going to draw up, and it must not be looked at as such. The house has perfect freedom to draw up the constitution, and when others come into the house, they will have perfect freedom too to fashion that constitution. The resolution therefore steers between these two extremes and lays down only certain fundamentals, which I do believe no group or party and hardly any individual in India can dispute. We say that it is our firm and solemn resolve to have an independent sovereign republic. This is the first concept thrown to the Constituent Assembly. We want to have an independent sovereign republic. I may on going giving this reference very frequently. It must inevitably be a republic. Now, some friends have raised the question, why have you not put in the word democratic here? Well, I told them that it is conceivable, of course, that a republic may not be democratic, but the whole of our party is witness to this fact that we stand for the democratic institution. He says this is a foundation. I don't have to say this. Obviously, we are aiming at democracy and nothing less than a democracy. What form of democracy? What shape it might take is another matter. The democracies may not have to change their shape somewhat before long if they have to remain completely democratic. We are not going just to copy. I hope a certain democratic procedure or an institution of a so-called democratic country, we may improve upon it. In any event, I will read it here very slowly. In any event, whatever system of government we may establish here must fit in with the temper of our people and be acceptable to them. We stand for democracy. It will be for this House to determine what shape to give to that democracy. The fullest democracy, I hope the House will notice that in this resolution, although we have not used the word democratic because we thought it is obvious that the word republic contains that word, and we did not want to use unnecessary words and redundant words, but we have done something much more than using the word. We have given the content of democracy in this resolution, and not only the content of democracy, but the content, if I may say so, of economic democracy. Therefore, the perception of the objective resolution which was moved by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was that we will run a sovereign democratic republic. The foundation is economic democracy. I am not reading much out of that. Now, another interesting part I have to place before you. When this issue was being discussed on the basis of this resolution, then many voices came. The voices of that it should be a Hindu state because this is a Hindu populous country. Others said, no, this should be not a religious state. There are many more Muslims who are still in India. They continue to remain in India. They didn't want to go to the Holy Sthan. Christians were there, minorities were there. Many voices came. And one interesting voice that really struck me, I shall place for your consideration, was the voice of, a speech of Mr. Jaipal Singh. He was a member of the Constituent Assembly. He was representing the Adivasis from Bihar. This statement, according to my reading, had thrown the real light of Indian society, and that led ultimately to accept the Constitution and the preamble. What did he say? I will read out very short speech but very interesting speech. Sir, I rise to speak on behalf of millions of unknown hordes, yet very important, of unrecognized warriors of freedom, the original people of India who have variously been known as backward tribes, primitive tribes, criminal tribes, and everything else. Sir, I am proud to be a Jangli. Adivasis of this country, they were termed by different character by the British imperialists that he was referring to. Then he says, I am proud to be a Jangli. That is the name by which we are known in my part of the country. Living as we do in the jungles, we know what it means to support this resolution. On behalf of more than 30 millions of the Adivasis, with huge cheers in the house, I support it not merely because it may have been sponsored by a leader of Indian National Congress. I support it because it is a resolution which gives expression to sentiments that throb in every heart in this country. I have no quarrel with the word of this resolution at all. As a Jangli, as an Adivasi, I am not expected to understand the legal intricacies of the resolution, but my common sense tells me, the common sense of my people tells me that every one of us should march in that road of freedom and fight together. Sir, if there is any group of Indian people that has been shabbily treated, it's my people. They have been disgracefully treated, neglected for the last 6,000 years. The history of India's valley civilization, a child of which I am, shows quite clearly that it is the newcomers. This is very important, particularly in the present context of the Indian society and the views of certain political dispensations. I read it. The history of the India's value civilization, a child of which I am, shows quite clearly that it is the newcomers. Most of you here are intruders, as far as I am concerned. It is the newcomers who have driven away my people from the Indus Valley to the jungle fastness. The resolution is not going to teach Adivasis democracy. You cannot teach democracy to the tribal people. You have to learn democratic ways from them. They are the most democratic people on earth. Therefore, the Indian soil, the Adivasis, they were telling that we are the most democratic people, we are the Adivasis. You all are intruders. Adivasis, he said, we don't have any religion. That he said, went on speaking further, I am not listening that. Now, well, these discussions were there. Then ultimately the constitution was drafted, adopted. And what was the basic adoption? That is reflected in the preamble of the constitution. Now, we have decided to have a democratic sovereign republic. And ultimately, the economic democracy is the foundation on which discussions are going on. Therefore, the constitution ultimately boils down, gives its essence. Preamble is the essence of the constitution. Supreme Court repeatedly said this is soul of the constitution. And what does the constitution wanted to achieve? The preamble says that we the people of India. Consider many voices are coming and going. Ultimately, Adivasi is giving a threat. We are the original land, we are the original belongings of the country. We don't have any religion. We all, you are intruders. We belong to the Indus civilization. Therefore, ultimately, the resolution comes, we the people of India. No barrier of class, caste, creed, religion, color, race, nothing. We the people of India give unto ourselves. The constitution was given to us by the Indian people, no one else. And what is the target? Target, it is said that we want to perceive and achieve political justice, economic justice, and social justice. This is the trinity on which we live. But how to achieve this justice, economic, political, and social? It can only be done if you have liberty of thought and expression. Liberty, not freedom. Why this question liberty came, that was also discussed. The freedom is my birthright. A baby when born, he cries, that is his freedom to protest. But the question is, will he have the liberty? If the powerful, the rulers, does not permit you to cry, what would happen? That's why the constitution makers chosen the word liberty instead of freedom. Liberty of thought and expression. Now expression arises only you have an idea. You have your own thought. And thought can only be achieved if you have proper information, proper education. Therefore, the basic duty was to have the education to all, to encourage them to have their thought process and to express openly their mind. And to ensure that, you have to ensure fraternity. You have to ensure liberty of faith. You have to ensure liberty of religion. You have to ensure liberty of ideas, language, expression. Today, even our food habits are going to be curtailed. Liberty, even in case of food habit, is gone. It's sought to be made. Therefore, the constitution makers thought one thing after having direct 200 years of anti-British war. We say the liberty of thought and liberty of expression. And this should be achieved by a republican sovereign government. How would the republic Now it was said that every 5 years we will elect people to rule us. Because we are the governors and we are the governed. Therefore we will fix up our rulers. But what would they rule? It can't be monarchical rule. It can't be like that the king can do no wrong. It can't be like that the God is king and king is God. It is that we would be ruled by our own representative, but what would be the target of ruling, achievement target is also fixed. Political justice, economic justice, social justice, ensuring fraternity and dignity of person. Preamble is very short, I am sure everybody must have gone through it. If not, please go through it. I can just quote from Justice Krishna Iyer. Once he said in a particular seminar that I would only say, my fellow brothers, read the preamble once, read twice, read thrice, read 100 times. Then you will get what the Constitution thought of and what was achieved and what is to be attained. In this background, Ambedkar, who was the final drafting authority, he said we are going into the new era of contradiction because political justice is given. One person, one vote, one value. He was, of course, a well-known person having huge knowledge of law, society and others. He expressed a doubt even in the House of the Constituent Assembly that we are entering into an era of contradiction. Political justice, but would really one man, one value, one vote be made practicable? Why? I'll come to why later. I just give an example. I was thinking myself. Now suppose in a factory owner has one vote, one value. And the casual worker has one vote, one value. A rickshaw puller has one vote, one value. And I am riding rickshaw, commanding over him has one vote, one value. Would it really be practicable? He said it would be feasible and practicable only when we can achieve economic democracy. We can achieve economic justice and transform into social justice. If I am to depend on the factory owner's whims, that if you ask me a question, freedom of thought, go back. Just now when I was entering to this hall, one phone call came from Calcutta. One casual worker of a college, he had participated in the election process, not candidate. The principal called him and said that you have participated in the election process, now you have to go back. He said, why sir, I have done nothing wrong so far my job is concerned. He said, nothing doing, it's my desire, it's my power. You were a temporary worker, you go back. Now this gentleman will have to surrender before the authority. Save my job, sir. Tell me what to do. And whatever that person says, you are forced to follow that. Therefore, the political justice would ultimately lead us to an era of contradiction unless we can achieve economic justice. That's why the Indian Constitution, in its directive principles of state policy, apart from the fundamental rights, speaks of economic justice and removal of economic disparity. Now this preamble, I am just diverting, this preamble that we have to achieve these three important parts, and the limb, who will make me move into that, is my independent thought, my expression. I can say, yes, you are the king, but I think you are naked. The king cannot say, you can't say I am naked. Even if I am naked, you have to accept it. No. Therefore, this preamble ultimately leads us to the functional part of the Constitution. Constitution is not the law, but Constitution is the source of law. We are sovereign. Sovereign means people can take their own decision. We are sovereign means no external force can interfere in our own decision running the country. But we are not sovereign to the extent of being a monarch. Our powers are limited, controlled by the Constitution. Constitution are fixed of what is to be done. Constitution ensures fundamental rights. Right to equality. Freedom of expression is a part of fundamental right. Freedom of movement. Police can't come and say, yes, Mr. X, you can't go beyond this particular limit. There's no Lakshman Rekha. Indian Constitution doesn't give in Lakshman Rekha for anyone. Everybody has every right to move freely. These fundamental rights, the Constitution made it enforceable. And to make it enforceable, this is the functional part of the Constitution. The Constitution created constitutional courts. We had the civil courts, we had the criminal courts, we had many other tribunals probably. But to enforce the constitutional rights, the Constitution created constitutional courts. And Article 32 is a part of the fundamental right. That means you have the fundamental right to get justice. Your justice doesn't depend on the whims of the king or whims of the Qazi. Your justice is to depend on your constitutional right. Therefore, the Constitution made provision of enforcing of the constitutional rights with the fundamental rights, which is Article 32. The Constitution also thought of. The fundamental rights, very well, Supreme Court will ensure under Article 32, but there are many other rights which would arise from the actions of the state authorities. There, at the state level, Article 226 gives you a particular forum of constitutional rights and other rights as well. The justice delivery system becomes one of the inalienable part of the enforcement of the Constitution and constitutional rights. You make a law, yes. You have a majority, you can make a law. But the question is, does that law runs with the constitutional principle? Can you say that, I have a right, I can make a law that I will make no enforcement of rule of law or right to equality? You have no right. I can make a law that this group of persons, like it was made by the Britishers to the Adivasis, which was reflected by Jaipal Singh ji in Constituent Assembly, that you have marked as dacoits, thieves, and you have thrown us to the corner. That cannot be done. Therefore, the enforcement of the constitutional rights, the constitutional machineries were created. But what should be enforced? The enforcement is the rule of law. It's a sovereign democratic republic. Republic is the representation of the people. All people has to be treated equally under the law. Today we cannot make economic justice. I can't say that myself and my rickshaw puller would be on the same plank. But Constitution says may not be on the same plank today. But your attempt would be to ensure that the gap of difference of income is gradually minimized. It doesn't mean that take away a Mangal Sutra from this lady and give it to other lady. This sort of wrong ideas is really destroying the constitutional basic forms. Whoever says that is against the Constitution. Constitution entrusts upon you. You have been elected on taking oath of the Constitution. By touching the Constitution in the forehead is not the functional form. You have to make it functional. By that you have to take policy decisions which will gradually minimize the gap. But what had happened, that's why the Constitution is a dynamic instrument. Everybody says Constitution is not a static one. Like any other sub-constitutional laws, The Constitution is dynamic. With change of time, the constitutional principles interpretation changes. And that's the beauty of the Indian constitutional jurisprudence. In the last 1 year, after the pandemic, India had been proud of 36 billionaire families. That's the report given by one of the world's most reputed economic journal, Forbes. But at the same time, the Indian people are going down and down in the hunger index. They have expressed their surprise. How could it possible? The country which is producing billionaires is going down and down to the hunger index. That shows, unfortunately, our policymakers could not make a policy which reduces the gap. On the contrary, the policy which widens the gap. We will say as a government, this is not permissible under the Constitution. I have a right to say this. And if you have a right to say this, after 10, 15 years, he will be, what do I say, he will be accused of violation of UAPA. We have seen a lady, an author. She has been inflicted with UAPA after 10 years of a speech which she had delivered. Therefore, the Constitution does not empower you. Constitution empowers you to govern according to the rule of law. Law means not anything. Law means which is permissible under the constitutional principle. Constitution says nobody is above the law. But at the same time, everybody is treated equally under the law. This equality and fraternity is the basic perception of our Indian Constitution. There are many articles, you need not be bothered about those articles. What the Constitution lovers, Constitution seekers, the Constitution perceivers, and the students will have to go by the ethos of the Constitution, which is the preamble, and that gives us the basic idea of right to equality. We have to see whether the right to equality is being gradually enforced. I again say, don't think it can be done today. But we have to see whether we are proceeding to that. At one point of time, there were government policies by which national properties were created. All these basic infrastructures belong to the nation. We all were owner of that. Unfortunately, we are now seeing that these are being gradually shifted to the private individuals. Would that again not be against the principles which has been described in directive principles of state policy? That you have to consider. I will not take much of your time. I believe I have already taxed much. Therefore, I will conclude appealing to you that let us create a situation, let us create a society where we can disseminate knowledge, make us more universities, more colleges, more schools. The students should go. Why should not we have 100% literacy? Literacy doesn't mean only 3 Rs. Literacy means you have a right of independent thought process. And then allow them to say, because by criticism you are strengthened, not weakened. But by blogging the criticism voices, you are really leading yourself to a cul-de-sac situation. Let us not do that. Let the Republic, I will conclude quoting from Rabindranath Tagore, I can't really translate it. He perceived Republic is like that. Amra shobai Raja, everybody is king. Since we are ruling the country, Amra shobai Raja, amader ei Rajar Rajotte. It's our kingdom, we are all king. And that's why we can correlate with the king. We are good and king is good. We want king to be good like us. That is the perception of republic, and that should be achieved, and we should try for that. Thank you.